What if the sharpest challenge to democracy isn't a tyrant? But a question Socrates asked 2.5 millennia ago that still echoes today. Democracy is often sold as the collective wisdom of many. But Socrates left Athens with a harsher verdict. Wisdom isn't a crowd temperament. It's a practice stance. The agora rewarded lively debate and popular will. Yet it also punished the stubborn questioner who refused to bow to majority sentiment. In that tension lies the controversial truth. Democracy can survive only if it can tolerate voices that prick the delicate skin of consensus. Athens in the late 5th century BCE was a sunlit theater of ideas, where votes were cast on public issues with the same ritual as ostracism or celebration. The polis projected power outward, but it was also a mirror held up to every citizen's inner doubts. Socrates walked that street with a different sort of weapon: questions. He didn't claim authority, he claimed responsibility. He believed knowledge begins in discomfort, the kind that arrives when a claim meets another claim and both threaten to fall apart. The famous charge against him, corrupting the youth and impiety, reads like a political indictment of intellectual independence. Yet the deeper accusation was not rebellion against tradition, but insolence towards certainty. In Socrates' method, there's a relentless narrowing of the self-deception that sits smugly behind the crowd. If democracy is the rule of many, Socrates argued, the many must be led not by certainty, but by disciplined inquiry. He didn't seek to extinguish democracy. He sought to cleanse it of its most seductive toxin, the idea that agreement equals wisdom. Consider the moment of his trial as a hinge in history. The jurors weighed not only the truth of his statements, but the danger of a public philosopher, whose questions unsettled the bedrock of collective belief. When he refused to offer flattering speeches or a marketable defense, he chose integrity over safety. He chose to be judged by reasons, not by applause, in a system that prizes the decision of the many. His insistence on the power of a single, well-aimed question felt like a betrayal to some and a beacon to others. The paradox deepens when we translate Athens' experiment into a modern frame. Today, as democracies claim legitimacy by electing representatives who claim to reflect the people's will. Yet every era must navigate the same inconsistent human soil: fear, ignorance, passion, and the seductive certainty that loud voices equal loud truths. Socrates would have thrived in a marketplace of ideas, but he also would have reminded us that a marketplace can be crowded with vendors peddling certainty. The true goods require a buyer's discernment, not passive assent. As the trial unfolds, we hear a city debating its own future. Some argue that punishment for a mind too free is the price democracy pays when it matures beyond simple appeasement. Others insist that a society that does not protect dissent becomes a theater of show and tell, not a republic of reason. The jury's verdict is not merely juridical. It is a moral ledger, balancing liberty and order, curiosity and obedience, truth and public peace. In that ledger, Socrates is not the enemy of democracy, but its most uncomfortable tutor. The turning point comes with a subtle shift in how we read democracy. It is not an enemy of truth to insist that the majority does not automatically possess it. It is, instead, its most tested companion, because truth in Socrates' sense is an emergent property of dialogue, argument, and the refusal to settle for easy answers. If democracy is a shared scaffold for human life, then questions are its structural beams. Without them, the building tips toward dogma, and the crowd's grip tightens around a single lantern while the night grows darker around every unanswered corner. The controversial truth-bearer and unsettling is this: the greatest threat to democracy is not the skeptic outside its gates, but the comfortable consensus that refuses to entertain doubt. Socrates didn't seek to destroy the crowd. He sought to redeem it by insisting that the crowd's power rests on its capacity to be corrected, not merely convinced. Wisdom, in this light, becomes a practice, not a possession. The unexamined democracy is a fragile thing, easily bent by fear, easily dazzled by abundance, easily captured by the loudest drumbeat. This is the paradox that makes the Socratic challenge both perilous and necessary. Our democratic institutions rely on educated consent, on institutions that can withstand the weather of disagreement, on citizens who recognize that agreement can be the enemy of truth if it grows complacent. Socrates' fate, then, becomes not a cautionary tale about the danger of questioning, but a warning that a society willing to silence its critics is a society willing to barter its future for immediate ease. The price of shallow harmony is a long future where the truth itself becomes a question nobody asks aloud. So where does this leave us today? In a world of rapid information, polarized opinions, and a politics that often seems to reward certainty more than understanding, it leaves us with a challenge. Cultivate the habit of listening to the discomfort. Train the mind to hold two opposing possibilities at once, and design systems that reward the courage to change one's mind. If democracy is a living organism, it grows strongest where debate is not an occasion for triumph, but a discipline for truth. Socrates didn't die for an abstract principle of dissent. He died for a principle of integrity. In that principle lies a larger question. Can a people insist on wisdom without surrendering to cynicism? Can a community govern itself without abolishing the very skepticism that keeps it honest? The controversial truth, finally, is both provocative and hopeful. If democracy is a garden, then Socrates is its gardener who plants seeds of doubt and waters them with humility. The weed he fought was not the crowd, but the complacent certainty that the crowd is always right. His demonstration is the enduring invitation. Continuously question what we think we know, and teach future generations to treat uncertainty as a shared responsibility rather than a personal threat. The question we carry forward is not merely what is true, but what kind of truth a community is willing to defend when it hurts, when it exposes its own insecurities, and when it asks more of itself than in the end. Socrates is not a verdict against democracy. He is the stubborn conscience of democracy, reminding it that wisdom is not a statue to be admired, but a practice to be lived. If we listen, we might hear a humble refrain. May our crowds be patient, may our leaders be curious, and may our doubts be generous. Only then does the promise of democracy rule by the people become not a convenient illusion, but a durable, living commitment. Metadata video title, max 80 chars, short text for thumbnails, 3 to 5 words. Exploring the provocative idea that Socrates, though often seen as Athens' hero of questioning, exposes a deep tension in democracy. Can a community govern itself wisely when its own voice can turn on the truth-tellers among them? A thought-provoking look at belief, dissent, and the fragile balance between majority power and philosophical integrity. Socrates' democracy, philosophy,